On the front page of the Pariser Tageblatt of the 25th of June 1934, we can read that there was an assassination attempt on the Reichsführer-SS Heinrich Himmler, which took place in the Schorfheide to the northeast of Berlin on the 19th of June 1934. The incident took place whilst Himmler was travelling to the ceremony to rebury the remains of Hermann Göring's deceased wife, Carin Göring. The body of Carin Göring had been reinterred from Sweden to Schorfheide after her grave in Sweden had been vandalised. As you can see from this video, the Schorfheide is in parts heavily forested, and thus it may seem to be a good place for an ambush. By the middle of 1934, tensions were growing inside Nazi Germany between the clique around Adolf Hitler and Ernst Röhm, who led the SA. In these circumstances, Himmler, a believer in conspiracy theories, and, like most conspiracists, also had a persecution complex, no doubt saw enemies everywhere. Heinrich Himmler had been Reichsführer-SS since 1929 and had also held the position of Inspector of the State Secret Police since April 1934, when the role had gone to him from Hermann Göring. Now, let's have a look at what was behind this alleged assassination. Carin Göring was the first wife of Hermann Göring. She was 5 years older than he was, and it was undoubtedly a very happy marriage. She'd left her Swedish army officer husband to be with Hermann Göring, who, although of aristocratic descent, was by then not in a financially stable position. She died in 1931, and once Hermann Göring had become Prussian Prime Minister in 1933, his financial stability improved enormously. He was able to acquire the country estate at Carinhall on the Schorfheide. Next to nothing remains of it today, as you can see in this video, and you might want to see a longer video I did when I was there. This video, what you can see right now, was filmed at the same time of the year to when the reburial took place. Carin Göring was reburied in a special crypt in a very solemn ceremony to which were invited the establishment elite of Nazi Germany on the 19th of June 1934. During the journey to this state ceremony from Berlin, an object smashed through the windscreen of Himmler's Maybach limousine, injuring his arm. Himmler himself was convinced that the object was a missile fired at him by an assassin in an attempt to kill him. If I may, I'll now leave this story and continue with something that happened to me in January 1999 as I was driving towards Warsaw. I was then on the dual carriageway to the south of Płonsk when the right wing mirror of the Opel Astra I was driving suddenly exploded. I wasn't driving fast as there was snow around and possibly ice on the road, and managed to stop quite quickly. There was not a lot of traffic and I did my best to look for the parts of the mirror, but they couldn't be found. The question remains, was this an attempted assassination on me, perhaps from the husband of the lady I was with who had forgotten to tell me that she was married, as most of them seem to do, or perhaps it was an attempted assassination of her from one of my many female admirers, or was it that a stone had been thrown up from another vehicle and I'd been lucky that it hadn't not been some 40 centimetres more to the left and a couple of centimetres higher, in which case it wouldn't have been such a pleasant ending for me. And not being a conspiracist, I dropped the assassination theory. However, Himmler was more of a suspicious so-and-so than I am. So what did other people who were there actually think? Hitler's press chief, Otto Dietrich, witnessed the incident, and he gave the following description of the events in his memoirs. On the journey through the forest from Berlin to the Schorfheide, where Göring lived, an object the size of a bullet pierced Himmler's windscreen. I assumed it was a stone, as no firing sound had been heard, but what it was exactly couldn't be determined. Rudolf Diels noted in his book Lucifer ante portas about the Schorfheide incident. On the journey to Schorfheide, Himmler's car was shot at from behind. In the book he put shot at in inverted commas. The perpetrator had, without a doubt, wanted to hit Hitler. There were raids and arrests and excitement which lasted quite a while over a harmless stone that had hit the rear window of the car, but it was one of the practices to put Hitler in the right frame of mind for the violence of the 30th of June 1934. It gave birth to mistrust, madness and arbitrariness. There were, however, those that believed it was a genuine attempt to kill someone. Hitler's personal servant, Heinz Linger, who also witnessed the event, wrote in his memoirs, "Heinrich Himmler was driving in front of us. Suddenly, shots rang out from the thicket of the forest. Himmler's car stopped. He'd been hit. Himmler, deeply shocked and pale, hastily explained to Hitler that he'd been shot at. After the incident, we continued our journey and Hitler said, 'That was surely meant to hit me, since Himmler doesn't normally drive in front of me. Perhaps it's well known that I always sit next to the driver. The bullet holes in Himmler's car are in that direction. Therefore Hitler thought that he was the subject of the attempted killing, and as a result he ordered that all of his vehicles be equipped with suitable armour soon after the event. He even gave presents of such vehicles to his entourage, such as Goebbels and Speer, amongst others.' Others close to the events later stated it was probably not a missile but rather a stone or similar object thrown up by Himmler's fast-moving car or by another car, and that the incident was therefore likely an accident, not an attempt on Himmler's life. Hans Bernd Gisevius, one of the few Gestapo officers who worked with the German resistance against Nazism to survive, was then at the Reich Ministry of the Interior. He wrote in his post-war memoirs that Police General Kurt Daluege had led the official investigation into the incident and concluded in its final report that the episode had not been an assassination attempt, but that the object that had broken the window of Himmler's car had merely been a stone chip caused by the nature of the road on which they were travelling. According to Gisevius, Himmler did not accept the results of the police investigation, but instead became convinced that the Sturmabteilung SA was responsible for the incident, which he continued to view as an assassination attempt. As part of the political purge carried out a few days later against what was termed the attempted Röhm coup on the 30th of June 1934, Himmler was looking for blood. SA Standartenführer and Gestapo criminal investigators Karl Belding and Bernhard Fischer-Schwede were to pay the price. These two had been transferred from Berlin to Breslau in the spring of 1934. Himmler believed that they were the assassins. When they turned up for work on the 30th of June 1934, they were arrested. The Breslau police headquarters had been taken over by the SS, which had been given executive power in Silesia in the morning hours of that day. The two suspects were locked up with numerous other arrested SA members. In the early morning hours of the 1st of July 1934, Belding was taken from the in-house prison on orders from Berlin and shot, together with 6 other SA members in a forest outside Breslau by an SS commando led by SS Obersturmführer Heinz Schlumps. The leader of the Breslau SS section was SS Oberführer Theodor Böckelmann. Here we can see Böckelmann in the middle of June 1931 standing with Hitler and other SA participants at the first course of the Reichsführer-Schule. Böckelmann is in SA uniform, standing second from the right. Böckelmann had met Fischer-Schwede at this course and liked him. When the condemned were collected, ignoring orders from Berlin, he ensured that Fischer-Schwede was not in the group and thus his life was spared. Fischer-Schwede was transported to Berlin on Böckelmann's instructions and sent there as a prisoner to the Columbia House concentration camp, the former location of which you can see in this video. Despite the seriousness of the accusation, after several weeks in the camp he was released. In Germany, no mention of the alleged assassination attempt was initially made, but it did make the news in the Pariser Tageblatt, and it was reported in the Prague-based SPD in exile in its reports. The SPD took the view that it was an assassination attempt, suspecting that the perpetrators were members of the SA. It identified Hitler as the target of the assassination attempt. The report stated, and here I am quoting directly in translation, Reports from SS circles suggest that an assassination attempt on Hitler had indeed been made on the occasion of the funeral of Göring's wife at Carinhall on the Schorfheide. Hitler, as always, arrived in 4 cars with a large entourage. He always sat in a different car, so that no one knew exactly which one he used on each journey. However, during the journey to Schorfheide, it was believed that he was in the first car. The car was then shot at by SA men. Among those in this car was Himmler, who suffered a serious wound in the arm. For this reason, Himmler has not been seen in public since then, and did not even take part in the bloody action against Röhm. Hitler, however, sat in the 3rd car. The alleged assassination attempt was not announced in the domestic German press, which was controlled by the regime, until July 1934. The newspaper Der Deutsche reported on the 19th of July 1934 that SA Standartenführer Julius Ull, the leader of the bodyguard of SA Chief Ernst Röhm, was behind the attempt. Ull had been murdered on the 2nd of July 1934, so was not in any position to contest the allegation. To return to Hans Bernd Gisevius, who, as an employee of the Ministry of the Interior, was informed about the assassination attempt at the time. In 1946 he wrote in his book Until the Bitter End the following: "Everyone was on the move. Reich ministers, diplomats, the party leadership, the generals. Hitler's also present. The ceremony is about to begin. Gauleiter Kuber is reciting his last eulogy to the noblest woman in Germany. She comes from Sweden and she died 2 years ago. Himmler appears chalk white and agitated. He hastily pulls Göring aside, who then calls on Hitler, and a war council takes place before the astonished guests. Himmler demands the immediate execution of 40 communists on the drive to Schorfheide. He was shot at. The bullet went right through the protective glass of his car. He owes his life only to Providence." A few hours later, Daluga tells me, laughing, about the incident. With the air of a consummate honest man, Daluga offers to investigate this assassination attempt. I have the original report of this investigation. It's a valuable appendix of the events of the 30th of June 1934. For on that day, 2 Standartenführers, the alleged assassins, were killed. Himmler had them shot, even though the report presented to him clearly showed that the hole in the windshield was not caused by a gunshot at all, but by a stone thrown by another car overtaking his at more than 100 kilometers an hour. The same Himmler who initially wanted to indiscriminately massacre 40 communists later just as arbitrarily singled out 2 SA leaders, who may have committed all sorts of other crimes, but certainly didn't shoot at him. Is that a contradiction? No. Shocked, Himmler first wanted swift revenge. Everyone should know how expensive an attack on him would be, but at the same time, this gruesome story fits in perfectly with his preparations for the 30th of June 1934. He therefore coldly and calculatingly blamed the assassination attempt on the SA. The devil. Now Hitler and Göring must understand how far Karl Ernst, Heine and Röhm must have already dared to go. Where something like this is being hatched, the tension must be unbearable, and so from mid-June onwards, there would be no more compromise. It was no longer a matter of hook sinking or bending. The second wave is rolling in mightily. Everyone senses that this time it will sweep the revolutionaries themselves. Who will swallow whom? That is the general question. And at another point he added, Belding is one of the 2 SA Standartenführers who carried out the alleged assassination attempt on Himmler on the Schorfheide. Since everybody already knows this, it's better not to ask. I need to point out that there are a number of inaccuracies in Until the Bitter End, although I suppose there would be if most of us wrote our biographies. How can we explain that Karl Belding and Bernhard Fischer-Schweder were singled out for execution for the alleged assassination attempt? The most logical explanation is that it's related to the murder charge of Helmut Unger. Helmut Unger was a Nazi party activist and SA man who had spied also for the pre-1933 German political police, the SPD, and possibly also the Communist Party. On the basis of then newly surfaced incriminating material, Unger was summoned to the Horst Wessel House, a branch of the Gestapo, for questioning on the 24th of June 1933. He was interrogated by Detective Superintendent Rudolf Braschwitz. Unger admitted that he'd worked as a paid informer in 1931 and 1932. According to Braschwitz's later statements, he suffered a nervous breakdown after his confession, regretted his behaviour, and described himself as a pig. Since Unger had only been guilty of misconduct from the party point of view, but he'd not broken any laws, he was allowed to leave Braschwitz's office after the confession. What possibly happened was that he was taken away by Karl Belding, who had initially recruited him into the party, and Standartenführer Bernhard Fischer-Schweder. He was then murdered at an unknown location. Unger's parents filed an unsuccessful missing person report with the police soon after his disappearance. A complaint to the Central Public Prosecutor's Office in the Prussian State Ministry was also unsuccessful. On the basis of circumstantial evidence, they became aware that Belding and Fischer-Schweder had probably killed their son. They demanded that authorities prosecute the alleged perpetrators. Gestapo Chief Rudolf Diels himself went to the couple and explained that Belding and Fischer-Schweder had actually committed the crime they were accused of. They, the parents, would have to come to terms with it. However, by order of the Reich Chancellery, Diels had to prepare a report on the incident, which was probably one of the reasons why the two were meanwhile transferred to Breslau, and, when a suitable occasion arose, they were gotten rid of. Thus, the Nazi leadership was able to get rid of two birds with one stone, if you'll pardon the pun. I hope you found this interesting. I've done videos on Carin Göring, the Göring estate at Carinhall, rather what's left of it, as well as Rudolf Braschwitz, who might have been a war criminal, and Bernhard Fischer-Schweder, who was to be convicted after the war of being part of the Tilsit Einsatzkommando. I upload a documentary video like this every Friday, a shorter video of up to 3 minutes on other days, and a video between the length of the other two on Tuesdays. I'm based in Poland and Germany, and thus I am able to bring you videos like this which show you what these locations look like today. Thus, you might want to subscribe. Also, you might be interested in becoming a channel member. That costs either €6 or £5, probably $6, and then that gives you access to all the videos which are available only to channel members. Currently, there's more than 800 of them, and these videos, most of them, it's true, are quite short, but there are a number of documentary style videos like this one as well there too. From me, thanks for watching. Bye for now.